Alan Rae here from the Bungunya district. Our property sits on the edge of the floodplain, north of Bungunya, which is basically on the northern side of the weir, which is affected by two catchments, the weir being the main one, with all the minor rivers running into it, and the other one that can affect us is the McIntyre. Generally speaking, because we're so slow moving, our system is pretty safe, but it just slowly cuts you off for 3, 4, 5 days, a week or something. It'll cut that off and then it'll get down again if there's no more rain events. Any big major rain events, it usually takes about a week from when that rain event has happened to when we get the peak of the flood down there. If they're in a floodplain areas, basically understand where their recording stations are, because that information is to the hour. I think they change it hourly, just about some of that stuff. Basically, there's a gauge at Torwood, there's a gauge at the Westmar at Bungunya there. There's a gauge at Hartman Bridge, which is the levels where the bridges are, so that's the reason of those. Then you've got one at Giddy Giddy, and that's quite a critical one because it gets a lot of that feed in from the McIntyre, from the Amber Collie scheme. And then the ones to see what rainfall events and how much water's gone in the river are the O'Connor and Gooder ones. And Wyaga, if those gauges are working accurately, you can track it pretty closely to the peaks. Not only your gauges the river, but the gauges the rainfall. So you can suddenly say, geez, they've had 2 inches there last night. What's going to happen? And suddenly you'll see it jump up in the river. You know, there'll be a big jump. Local knowledge is the other one, is to ring up a couple of, particularly upstreams. Say, you know, what did peak there at your place, and what's it going to do? You know, it's going to be a lot of water, or just a normal flood, or extra big one, or whatever. So that's the sort of thing to be understanding who's upstream of you, to be able to sort of get in contact with them. Once the water's gone past, it's those ones downstream start ringing you and say, what happened? You know, we're getting more water, or it's run out, or it's stopped, or yeah. If you know there's a flooded coming or something, I think you just tend to make sure you've got a few more supplies to sort of carry you through those periods. They've got to buy enough food for, say, a week or 10 days at least. You have choppers can come out and drop stuff, for sure, but it's a big expense for councils or whoever does it to do that. So you'll try and tell them, and we've had workmen there say, you know, listen, I think we're going to be caught in here for a week or 10 days. Go to town while you can, get some supplies. You give them that message, and we've done that to people who are working for us. So listen, you better get to town today because the road's going to be cut off tomorrow. We can see that coming down. And that's where those gauges are really, because they'll give you road closures, they'll give you what levels, and we know the levels when it gets onto the bridge or over the bridge. I think if you're working, doing stock work or something, try and get them to higher ground or wherever you can, or if you've got to get some dog biscuits or fodder or a bit of extra something for them, to get that beforehand. It's only for those ones that are stock caught on high ground on the river that you want to chuck a bale of hay to a few rams or a few ewes that are caught somewhere. You can keep them going till the water drops and they get out. We've had enough blackouts over the years that we sort of learned to sort of live with a blackout for a couple of days, but then nowadays with the systems, there's a lot more availability out there of generators and stuff, so you know, you gear yourself up for that. If you're on a river system, you must have, you know, a boat of some sort. So we can basically, if we know there's going to be roads cut somewhere, we can put a car on the other side. If we know we can get a boat to it, we'll then take the boat to the car, leave the boat there, go to town, do our bits, wherever we're going, come back and then hop back in the boat. And groceries, you know, that sort of stuff. They're just one of those things that people have just got to wait to the water drops away and allows them to get out, because, you know, they get across a couple of creek crossings, but guarantee the main one's still up ahead of them. So a boat, and a motor usually is pretty essential if you live on a river. You know, be ready for it if it looks like that, because often those rain changes, you can tell with the rain change if it's going to be a flood event pretty well, rather than just a wet change, yeah. You know, if we've had those long periods of wet weather where it's rain and rain and rain, you know, eventually you end up with a really good season, and then all of a sudden you get a flood wipes you out. And it's pretty standard procedure that happens, because that continuous rain, it just keeps coming. You know, at the end of it, there's going to be a flood, and then after it, you recover after that. So that's just life.